Recently a wise man from Aspect, I don't know if you know Bernard, he said, can I cuss on this?
You sure can.
We're not
Okay, he said, we like to build cool shit with cool people. And I'm like, yep, that sounds like that's about right. That's kind of been our motto. We like to build cool shit with cool people.
This is the Mass Timber Group Show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Brady, and today we caught up with Trent Debth, the VP and founder of TimberBLDR, for round 2 of Mass Timber Housing and Installation.
Taking over the Texas market and beyond, TimberBLDR is quickly becoming one of the top mass timber install companies in the U.S.
They're working on everything from custom homes to large commercial buildings for massive world-leading companies. But before we get into the interview, if you want the skills, knowledge, and tools to confidently work with mass timber and win more projects, you got to check out the Mass Timber Group Summit happening this August in Denver. We've got incredible workshops across the entire design build process, 3 amazing networking parties to connect you with mass timber leaders like Trent, 6 mastermind sessions to leave no question unanswered, and building tours of the coolest projects in Denver so you can see in person the benefits of working with mass timber. I guarantee you'll walk away with the information and connections to level up your timber career. Check out the link in the show notes below for more info. And if you like these podcasts, subscribing to the channel is the biggest compliment you can give us. It helps us book incredible guests like Trent and brings more mass timber awareness to the rest of the world. So with that, let's get into it.
So the birth of TimberBLDR. It all started not too long after our last podcast. I met a guy named Darren Smith, and he was with Builder Holdings. He's the EVP of Builder Holdings. And we just started having conversation. He was tasked with, by the CEO, Jack Bowen, came up to him one day and said, mass timber. And Darren was like, word association, right? No, you need to figure out what this mass timber thing is all about. And through a variety of people, they got my name, and he gave me a call, and we must have talked probably, I can talk. So, we probably talked for 2 hours that first night. And then over the course of the next several weeks, we realized that my goals with mass timber and, the things that I wanted to see, a company accomplish, and their goals with what they would like to see accomplished within the mass timber sector, were very much in alignment, along with our values and what we wanted to see out of a culture in a company. And, we made the decision to, I shut down my old company, and they started a new company called TimberBLDR. And then we started figuring it out together and building our team and, getting involved in some projects and getting our brand out there. I have to say, I think it's a pretty cool logo, pretty cool name.
Agreed.
I did not come up with it. Darren did. So it's been an exciting time. That was October 17th is when we formed the company. That was the day we filed for formation. And now fast forward to April, and we have several commercial awards that are, some of them are big and some of them are small. We have 6 houses under contract. We've completed 2 others, and on the single family residential, we're working with Freres and Aspect and several other people to develop our Mass Ply Light system. And so a lot's occurred over the last however many months, and so it's exciting. The mass timber community is not the type to, shun away new things by any means. And, we've really, we have felt welcomed and have gotten help from such a variety of people. I think the last time we were here, I talked about how great the folks at Carpentry Plus were, and they've helped us so much. Anytime we need advice, they're always there. folks at Kinsall, you just had time on. I've asked time several questions, and he's helped me out. I've been on the phone with Michael a whole bunch, and he's always been good for advice. So the mentorship from the guys that have been there for a while is there, and they're very helpful. I've pointed other people to Russ. There's a company that's starting to just get into mass timber erection, and they went and talked to Russ because I said, hey, you should really talk to this guy. They do it right. And that's the biggest thing is with all these new companies coming in, the key is to do it right. It doesn't matter if you're doing self-perform or if you are starting an install company from scratch, or if you're taking your existing framing company and adding mass timber to your repertoire. The biggest thing I care, you're doing it right.
Hey, we're going to get back to the podcast in just a second. But first, I have a question for you. Are you somebody looking to build a mass timber project? If the answer is yes, then you need to put together an experienced team.
Our partners at Cornerstone Timber Frames are leaders in heavy timber construction and have 30 plus years of experience, which means you can trust them to get the job done right.
They collaborate with Nordic Structures to bring you the highest quality FSC certified mass timber available. They also have some of the most advanced fabrication technology in the industry, so your project goes up smoothly without costly on-site modification or delays.
That means they have the experience, network, and technology to make your next mass timber project a success. Learn more about Cornerstone Timber Frames by clicking the link in the show notes below.
Well, like you said, you're able to call other mentors, people in the industry that have been there before, and we've talked to all these same people. It's like we just talked to Kinsall. We're going to have Carpentry Plus on here in a couple of weeks. Like everybody in that industry and in this niche is like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So like the more proficient installers and companies out there that are doing good work, the better it is for the industry. So that you don't have, like you said, shoddy work killing the rep for mass timber as a whole.
Yeah.
So knowing that everybody's on the same page and we're moving towards great companies and we're pushing the entire industry forward. Like, what are you guys working on right now that excites you?
Oh man, so many different things. We're obviously growing our commercial pipeline and getting some awards there, and planning our schedule out there. And that's always going to be exciting. There's always going to be lots of cool stuff. On the commercial side, I think the fact that we've added the component that we're installing all of the structural steel on 3 of our projects that we're awarded now, and we're doing that along with the mass timber so that it doesn't have any delays and it's all together. And we aren't looking to be a structural steel install company or erector by any means, but if it's structural steel up to maybe half of the structure along with the mass timber, it really just makes sense. So we're trying to include that in our scope. Sometimes we've been able to do that, and sometimes we aren't. We're going to be starting on a project at the Houston Zoo here in May, and that is a hybrid structure. So you've got steel, and you've got wood, you've got steel, you've got glue lams, you've got CLT, a little bit of everything. You got some really big glue lam beams in that project. Most of the columns are glue lam, and then there's a handful of steel columns. There's a few steel beams, and it's all kind of mixed together. There's an amazing architect, Lake Flato, that did that designed that. It was really one of my bucket lists to work with them on a project. They're well known for being sustainable and having really creative, cool projects. And then, we're working with a great GC that understands our role and includes us in that whole process of, putting the building together and planning the whole project. So
Plus, you had the Mass Ply Light frame. I know that you were one of the very first podcast interviews that we've did. And so thank you for coming on back in the day. But now that we've sped up, can you talk a little bit more about the install process? Because I believe that was the prototype. That was the very first project this Freres Mass Timber went into, correct?
Yeah, that's kind of my baby.
So
That
what are the numbers like? Square feet, like this type of thing.
So that project's 8,300 square foot under roof. It's a double shed roof, and on the one side we have 23-foot vaulted ceilings. Some of that's because of the whole system that they have on the roof. It's going to be rain catchment and solar. So the angle of the roof and the mass of the roof all feeds that. There's a 30,000 gallon storage tank. That's going to be their rainwater is going to be their primary water source. They have a well that they can use, but rainwater is going to be their primary water source. And they've got enough solar on that house to, completely be off the grid, with their battery backups. So, that building, it was a prototype. So, there were a lot of changes that happened in the middle of the project, and, we sort of ran with it. We learned a lot about how the system needs to work for it to be efficient and for it to go up properly and to hit our numbers budget wise. But even with those delays, the cost of that building was remarkably low considering it's mass timber. So we're hitting something, that's comparable to stick framing, and that's a big deal,
For somebody that wouldn't know, why would it be so low compared to a traditional stick frame, stud frame?
So there's a bunch of different variables. One, there's a lot more waste when it comes to stick framing. So there are methods of stick framing that have a lot less waste. Builder's First Source has one where they print every component's location on it and everything's cut to exact size. So there's other people that are trying to deal with the waste issue. So there's less waste. It's fast. It's really fast. There's more wood, but it's not as much more as you would think because we're also eliminating huge amounts of wood. I think that the best way that I've been able to describe it is we're kind of creating hollow CLT panels. So, between the columns and the beams and the panels that sandwich those columns and beams in the sill, we're creating hollow CLT panels. And when it comes to, mass timber, it all comes down to the material cost. It all comes down to how much fiber that you're using. So if we can hollow out the whole inside of a panel and remove that fiber from the project, then the cost gets a lot lower. The other thing is the labor. We're building that with a team of 8 guys, and so we're reducing the labor. We're reducing the time. When we're doing those residential projects on the exterior, the best example I have is we had one wall that we built, and we don't build super tall walls on the multifamily design. This is really just for single family. But this wall was 40-foot wide by 23-foot tall. It had 2 6x6 windows and 4 3x6 windows in it. And that wall took us 6 hours to build. During that process, the windows that, narrowing down to one little element, the windows, we were able to install the window bucks, flash the window bucks, install the windows, flash the windows, install the head flashing on all 6 of those windows in about 35 minutes. And that process, considering that 4 of those windows are 20 foot in the air, that process on the side of a house would have taken 3 to 4 hours. So, we did 3 to 4 hours of work in 35 minutes. So my best estimation is on the time savings, it's probably a 5x increase in speed with less labor. And then once that's up, it's ready for siding. And now we're even taking a look at how can we apply the cladding on the ground as well and eliminate yet another step. The other nice thing is in that build, we eliminated, we combined 5 trades of work into one trade. So there wasn't a separate company to install the windows. There wasn't a separate company to do the insulation. There's no drywall in that house at all. And there's different things that we do to combat the fact that there's no drywall. Then we did all the framing and installed all the doors. So, we took a lot of the scope and combined it into one process, which has been, one of the big speed increases and, time savings. That whole house, albeit it went a lot slower than we wanted it to go, that whole house is going to be completely dried in like a total of 6 weeks.
So you're doing 8,000 plus square foot custom home in drying it in 6 weeks. And then you're also combining all those different sub trades into like under one roof, right? So you got the doors, the windows, and then potentially even the cladding moving forward. And you had mentioned a couple minutes back about this is the single family model, but you had a multifamily model. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're working through some of the final design stuff on the multifamily system. Right now we're looking at 5 to 6 stories. So we're sort of staying within that realm of what stick framing is. But we believe that we can go taller than that and meet the code requirements of going taller than that into like a construction type 4. We're working through that still right now, but for sure we're going to be able to do, low rise multifamily. The system changes a little bit when you're talking about more of a commercial multifamily system. It's the interior walls are the same. We're still talking about a column and beam grid, with some sort of topping, whether that's a CLT slab or it's traditional trusses or joists, or, we're working on some designs with Mass Ply where we have, joists that have cutouts for HVAC and things like that. So, just trying to be innovative in that respect. But yeah, we're really excited about how the speed of construction with the reduced labor and yet staying within that cost structure of what would be considered stick framing. And then, some of it is dealing with the finishes and, what are acceptable finishes. And, understanding the aesthetic that people are going for. And so Freres is working with us on that. We've got some really cool, prototype finishes. I'm a big fan of one of the finishes, which is what we're doing in some of the parts of the house in Dripping Springs, Texas, which is some of the areas we're whitewashing the Mass Ply. It's getting sanded and then it's whitewashed. And there's some great products from Sanson that are making that possible to give us a really high-end quality look. And then, in parts of that house, we're cladding it with a 1/4-inch veneer plywood. So parts of that house, there's going to be a birch veneer plywood, and parts are going to have a mahogany veneer plywood. And when you're dealing with a veneer plywood that's only a 1/4-inch thick, the costs are still really low. So, you're getting, a much higher end finish, quality finish that is going to last forever, and you're able to do it cost effectively. There's cost effectively when you're working with mahogany is different than cost effectively when you're whitewashing a wall. But, if that's the look that if that's the aesthetic that you're going for. And then, one of the projects that we're looking at right now, we're looking at just applying a knockdown. So a traditional drywall texture and having a knockdown and paint. So, and
right on
that'll
top
go
of the
just
Mass Ply.
Mhm.
How do
Yep.
you stop the bleed through?
So there's some minimal, sanding and finishing you have to do to the plywood. But if you look at a knockdown texture, it covers most of the surface. And then it's just all about, the quality of the application and then the paint. So
Got it. And so kind of rehashing what makes this Mass Ply Light system, whether it's single family homes or multifamily, so effective is like, one, with Mass Ply Light, you can get your fiber thickness to whatever mill that you need for your structural ratings. But then it's also the aesthetic finish on the inside, or at least a partial finish for it. So you're saving on fiber, you're saving on speed, labor, and then some of the finishing on the interior. Am I getting that right?
yeah, and I mean, all of our gravity loads, all of the bearing loads, those are on, columns. So that's all in the columns. And, what we've done is we've worked with Aspect Engineering and Simpson Strong Tie and Freres to come up with an assembly that's incredibly strong and yet small. And so, we've kind of optimized our size to the smallest we can go and still attain all of the things that we're trying to accomplish. And then what Simpson is able to bring in is their expertise in fasteners, and they've worked in conjunction with Aspect and us to come up with intuitive, cost-effective solutions to something that would be very expensive to do in a different way. So, like, we don't have any post bases in our system. There's no post bases. It's all done with brackets and hold downs. So everything's under tension. And that way, we're able to save thousands of dollars with expensive post bases or column bases. Just little things like that, optimizing the screw placement and, figuring out how to utilize the beam hangers in the right way to make things fast. Finding that balance between the cost of the fastener versus the speed of installation. So, on these big, huge beams, we decided rather than use some sort of joinery to insert them into the tops of the columns, that the amount of time savings was worth it to just mount the beams with a hidden beam hanger. And then the other thing is all of this is fabricated on site. So when it arrives in billets. All of the columns arrive in long billets and we cut them to length. All of the panels arrive in long billets and we cut them to length. And what that does for us is twofold. One, we're able to get the material there very quickly because it's not having to see a fabricator offsite. And two, we're able to have an as-built structure. So when we arrived at the Dripping Springs house, it was the same as many residential structures. The foundation was just a little bit off of what was designed. And it was at no fault of the concrete company. It just, that's what ended up happening. And so we were able to very rapidly adjust our design for the as-built conditions of the slab and change those dimensions. If that was a CLT project, if that was, a traditional glue lam grid, columns and beams with CLT, floor decks, that would have been very difficult to do because all that stuff weeks ahead of that would have already been cut. And, it would have taken a lot more work to adjust the structure. So
Do you do you hear any objections about on-site fabrication, like having any lack of accuracy, or does it increase the labor time, or like how do you see that variable shake out?
well, I mean, it's going to increase the labor time. I mean, that's just the nature of the fact you're having to do something besides just lifting and setting. But if you're talking about the labor time, if something isn't as built to exactly what you're looking at,
Correct.
it could actually take longer or maybe not possible if, there's a mistake that needs to be adjusted for with, a prefabricated panel. So, I mean, it increases the time a little bit, but you already have a big savings on the fact that the material has not had to go through a lot of processing on the front end.
Which is cost
that's
too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's cost. So, if you have a SIPS panel that's going into a getting made in a big factory, yeah, it's going to be very efficient the way they build it. But at the end of the day, that factory has to be paid for. The labor that's building there has to be paid for. So, whereas you're just seeing this panel show up, there was a process that had to occur, and then that also had to be shipped. So, how efficient is it to ship a SIPS panel when a lot of what you're shipping is air, or a volumetric modular? And I don't have problems with SIPS or volumetric modular. It's just it's a different beast. And even panelized modular. So it all depends on where you're finding your savings. There's ways to do all of those things in an efficient way, and it just depends on what the project, what makes sense for that project.
So what would be the difference between a bad install or a good install? What are some examples out there that people can look out for? And then also, what can they ask their mass timber install company like yourself in the beginning? What are you seeing in the real world out there on the field that seems to be repeatedly happening and it kind of needs to get fixed?
Oh man, a good install. You ask so many questions in a row. A bad installer versus a good installer. I mean, I think the really bad installers are going to be blatantly obvious. It's not, like, I don't think it takes a rocket science to see when somebody's just doing a really bad job. I would say, it's not even necessarily good versus bad. It's, it's various levels of proficiency. So, you take an experienced install company that has like really experienced riggers and crew that are used to working as a team, and you can move along very fast, even as you come across problems and issues, and that just comes with the culture. That's one of the things that we work a lot on, is building the culture of our team, and that starts from the very beginning on the guys that we hire and the guys that we bring onto that team. But you can have a perfectly good company that just doesn't go as quick. It's not necessarily going to be a bad company. The thing is you got to find that balance between quick and quality, and accuracy. So we try and move efficiently. I don't like to use the word quick. We try to move efficiently through an install, and making sure that there's not a lot of wasted movement. And I think that is probably, to answers your other question, is, what makes a good install: efficiency of movement, efficiency of crane placement, efficiency of the sequencing of the panels, or the glue lambs, or the steel versus the glue lambs. Having a good plan. We're in an industry that has so much front loaded work. The installs themselves are relatively easy, if the front end work is done right. And I mean, that's definitely something that I learned from Carpentry Plus. They spend a ridiculous amount of time planning out all of the motions and the movements in their installs, and that's what we do. We're on the Houston Zoo. We're allowing ourselves 6 to 8 weeks to plan the sequencing out and make sure that everything is dialed in, and we understand how that structure is going to go together for every piece. Because with that project, it's one truck in, one truck out. So you don't have the luxury of saying, oh, actually, this piece needs to go first. Let's bring that piece in. It's going to come from the factory, sequenced on those trucks, and then those trucks are going to get installed. So, there's a tremendous amount of planning and understanding how those structures go together, having the right team in place, to put that plan together. We do installs for companies that also have that all done. And so knowing that you're going with a company that's done that work properly, you can go and bid a project with for company, because without saying which companies, but if a company has more work than they're able to do with their existing, and it could be us someday, with their existing crews, or that there's a delay, or They end up having to, get help on a project for whatever reason. Knowing that company has done all of their work on that front loaded work is really important, because if they don't, then what you bid for how long that should take might not happen if they didn't coordinate the sequencing with the manufacturer, if they didn't do those things, and so and most of the good companies out there, the ones that we talk to, they have an excellent path for that, whether it's and the companies that I see doing installs well, the companies that are out there doing them well, that's a key component to their whole process. Somebody who understands the structure, doing the sequencing, doing the planning, having the right project manager, so yeah, what makes a good install company, or having those things.
The other thing that you talked about before we hit record was kind of how you guys have a little bit more of a turnkey approach, where you're bundling the procurement and the specialty engineering and the install all under one roof, i.e. TimberBLDR. Does having a finger in those processes help make the install go smoothly?
Oh, most definitely. And whether it's us, or if we're working with another company, knowing that project has gone with the same team through the design, the procurement, the fabrication, that's that front loaded bit that's really key to the installation being successful. And for the owners of these projects to seeing the benefits of the mass timber approach. And we like to think of ourselves as, we can be an a la carte company. I can come in and just do install. I can come in and do procurement and install. I can come in and just do procurement, and then somebody else installs it, but in our perfect world, we're coming in the design assist phase, and then we're helping determine, what are the materials that are being used, and, working with the design group, or the owners, or the developer, to, help, influence those decisions. And then working through the engineering and the fabrication design, and with the manufacturer to, get all of the sequencing lined up, and, all the way up to the point where we're ready to install, and working through all that with a singular team, and being involved in all those different parts, that makes for a very efficient process. The alternative is you come in, when something is, the supplier has been bid out separately from the specialty engineering, separately from the install, and, all those things are separated, and it takes longer. It's not as efficient. Not to say you can't have a successful project that way. You can. But that's one of the things that we try to influence when we can, and when we can't, we adapt and overcome.
What are you seeing be like a major success in mass timber adoption into housing moving forward? Is it just more familiarity with it? Is it these innovative systems like Mass Ply Light? Rewind the conversation 3 years ago. Everybody said that mass timber going into housing of any shape or size was not feasible, or not in the near future. But like now, some of the shining stars in the industry are housing applications. Like, where do you see mass timber and housing moving towards?
Well, I think, first of all, it's always been feasible. It's the cost. We're building houses. We have houses under contract that are very expensive houses that are using mass timber. And so it's not necessarily a feasibility. I think it's back to the title of our last podcast, Mass Timber for the Masses, and it requires, it requires you to take care of some of the problems, that are inherent with using traditional mass timber. Coming up with hybrid solutions, using, some of the systems that we've come up with, trying to find the efficiencies, trying to, be innovative in how you design the house, but, that's what I think is what is going to bring, mass timber more into the residential world. And it already is coming in the residential world. And it's not just our innovation that's doing it. There's panelized stuff. There's there's some, it's like another version of some mass timber, which is BAMCore. I don't know if you've seen the BAMCore stuff. They have a really unique approach to how they do residential. There's panelized systems, there's volumetric systems, and these are all just different approaches to solve the same problem, which is how do we drive the cost down to something that's more palatable for the majority of the people that are out there building houses. What our target was the affordable housing market, and we are hopefully going to be exploring that here soon, with some projects that we're looking at. And I think that our system, because it's based around, we're trying to hit that price point of stick framing. It doesn't matter if it's a multi-million-dollar custom home or if it's a 1,000 square foot or 1,300 square foot affordable house. It really isn't the mass timber that's driving the cost. It's the design, it's the finishes, it's the fit out of that house that's going to drive the cost of that house. And, our goal is to have a very high quality, robust structure that is also affordable, because in the past, the path to that solution was cheapen the building materials. Let's use cardboard sheathing. Let's use, no sheathing. Let's see how we can eliminate, elements of the house that would make it a quality house, less insulation, lower quality, systems. And so we wanted to approach it we want to bring high quality to, low cost. And so, and I think that there's other people that are doing that as well. And it's always fun to sit and read some of the posts about, other people's innovations and where they're going with their systems and their processes. But, as much as we are a commercial install full service mass timber company, it's also a big component of our company that is hyper focused on residential, because there's a huge residential sector. And I'm not just talking about single family. I'm talking about workforce housing. I'm talking about multifamily, luxury multifamily, and hopefully even high-rise multifamily. And I think that the systems that we're developing, and it's not just us, there's other, inspiring people out there that are in parallel with us on some of the stuff that we're doing. I think it's really exciting to see what's going to happen in the next 2 to 5 years on the residential, sector.
What do you think in 2 to 5 years? I mean, I know that TimberBLDR is a very young company that was just spawned, and was it last year? Was that the official year of the
October 17th, 2023? And I say, we're a new company, but we're not a new company. The company's been around since 1968. So, I kind of say it's cheating, because, we have people that have a historical basis of knowledge in the construction world. Builder Holdings is a construction services company. They have been doing this for a really long time. So, we lean into a lot of their experience on various things. Chris Ross, he does most all of our estimating with me, but it's really him. I mean, he's bid out over $1 billion of projects, over the last few years, and
So-
that's experience you can't just get without doing it.
So knowing you're a part of like this much, much larger mega company, funding and revenue probably isn't a problem to, kind of get yourself off the ground. But I guess what I was trying to say is, where do you see yourself in 2 to 3 to 4 years? Do you see yourself more in like that single family residential space, or do you want to be kind of starting these like high rises residential?
No, I think that a balanced approach in construction in general is wise. I don't think that I think any time where you're putting all of your eggs into one basket is a recipe for disaster. I think that the balanced approach is what we're taking. We want to have our hands on some single family residential stuff. We want to have our hands on some garden style multifamily. We want to have our hands on, hopefully on some taller buildings, for multifamily. And then on the commercial side, it's the same thing. We want to be working on these smaller commercial projects that are, we're doing a restaurant in Plano, and it's a 6,000 square foot roof, and we're treating it just the same way we would treat a larger project. We're bringing our team to bear on it, and we're planning it out, and we're making it efficient, and we're making sure that it gets the same attention that a project that's like a 40,000 or 100,000 square foot building would get. But you need to have those projects along with the projects that are much larger, because that way it keeps you balanced, and it keeps you able. Like, the reason we're able to do the bigger projects is because we have a bunch of smaller projects that are feeding that effort. There's a lot heavier lift, when you're, of work, when you're dealing with one of those larger projects. And so, we don't want to just only work on large projects or only work on small projects, or only work on multifamily, because like right now, the commercial sector is a little bit slow. There's definitely projects happening. But the multifamily sector is going crazy. I mean, it's very busy. Not for Mass Timber. I mean, Mass Timber is still very new into the multifamily world. There's some really exciting, innovative projects that have happened lately. You guys had Andy on with Oh Wow.
Not yet.
That was he hasn't been on yet. Oh,
not yet. If you want to crack that door for us, we're open to that.
Oh yeah. No, you should talk to Andy. He's really cool. I ate dinner with him in Portland. But they're doing some really amazing stuff with point loaded, Mass Ply. So you have to have a little bit of all of that. And that's our approach.
Yeah. No, I like that. Like you said, all the eggs in one basket doesn't generally turn out very well for anybody, but you have to cut your teeth isn't the right word, but you got to have your hands in all those different markets so that you're ready and able to tackle whatever else is coming up right through the pipeline. Like multifamily is booming right now. Mass timber is becoming a part of it. Commercial might be slowing down. Like those are all going to go through different cyclical phases, right? As supply and demand ebbs and flows throughout the economy, right? And so like whatever projects come your way for mass timber, you got to be ready to tackle them.
And it's like Pete said, we're about to get to that hockey stick moment here pretty soon, and we're almost there, and it's about to really get nutty in many different sectors. So
absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, Trent. Like, we love catching up with you again. Before we hop off, where can people contact you or TimberBLDR?
Go to the website. My phone number is right there. It's my cell number. We're really firm believers of being connected to our clients, and anybody can pick up the phone. Email's great too. It's TimberBLDR, and it's BLDR, TimberBLDR.com. And that also talks about our approach. And, there's pictures of me without the beard. You guys didn't say anything about the beard. My wife made me wait until my wife wanted me to shave it because it's summertime, but she made me wait until after the Mass Timber Conference, because she's like, everybody saw you on that podcast. They'll never recognize you if you shave it, and no one's gonna even know who you are. So I waited until the day I got back from the Mass Timber Conference.
That's a wise woman. That's a wise woman.
Oh,
right. We'll link all that down there below. website, LinkedIn, your personal phone number. You'll get lots of fun texts, I'm sure. But thanks for coming on, man. As always, it's a pleasure, and see you around.
Yeah. Talk to you guys soon.
Take care.